Good morning and welcome everybody. My name is Anne-Rochelle Ine and I'm the Director General of the National Agency for Information Society in Niger, West Africa. Today's workshop, first one here, is about strengthening multi-stakeholder participation in technical internet governance. So welcome and thanks for being with us. We're going to start with two speakers, Teresa Swinehart and Guilherme Canela de Souza Godol, who is the Director of UNESCO's Division for Digital Inclusion and Policies and Digital Transformation on UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. Teresa is a Senior Vice President, Global Domains and Strategy at ICANN. And then we will have a panel where Valts Enstrides, who's the Director and a representative of Latvia and University of Latvia Livonian Institute, will be our first speaker. And then we will have Elizabeth Bacon, Senior Director, Policy and Privacy at Public Internet Registry. And then Amrita Chaudhary, who is the Director of Credit Consultant Association of India. So thanks for being with us, and everybody who's online also welcome. Christy, who's sitting on the side, will be looking at our online participants, and if you have questions, will be telling us what to do. So this is how the discussion is going to go. But before we start, as I said, we're going to have introductory remarks from Guilherme, who is also representing today Mr. Taufik Jalassi, UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Communication and Information, who could not join us this morning. Guilherme, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and especially thanks for all the early birds that are here with us. So you were supposed to have a cardinal, my boss Taufik, and you got a priest, but I will try to do the best job possible on this configuration. So, of course, the topic of the panel is very broad and very close to UNESCO's heart. There would be many ways to approach the idea of the multi-stakeholderism in the technical discussions in the internet. So I decided to focus on zooming with a particular cross-cutting example of the multilingualism aspect. But I could speak about others because this is in the DNA of UNESCO. Although we are an intergovernmental organization, from the very outset of our existence 80 years ago, UNESCO was one of these UN organizations that the member states always decided to send experts, civil society, librarians, archivists, for building the different documents, resolutions, etc., that were approved throughout the UNESCO's history. And if you see this landmark idea that was approved by our General Conference in the 10 years ago during the previous WS's review process, the concept of Internet universality, that concept is also associated with a set of indicators where UNESCO is recommending how the development of Internet should be assessed in a particular country. You remember that that set of indicators is established and organized around 5 pillars that's called ROM-X, so rights, openness, accessibility, and the M is multi-stakeholderism, and the X, the cross-cutting issues, gender, and so on. So it's just to say that from the outset, the message of UNESCO is if you want to assess the level of development of internet in a particular country, multi-stakeholderism is one of the pillars of this assessment. So this is the overall umbrella. But then let me focus very briefly on the example of multilingualism. UNESCO is the UN organization, among other things, is there in our very first paragraph, to promote the free flow of ideas. As you can imagine, there is no serious free flow of ideas without multilingualism. If you only can express yourself in a majority language, then the free flow of ideas is not being guaranteed. So that's why this is the philosophical principle behind the UNESCO mandate to protect and promote multilingualism everywhere, including, of course, in the digital spaces. So one of our intergovernmental programs, the Information for All program that I am the secretary, since 2001 has a specific group on information for all and multilingualism. And although it's an intergovernmental program, this specific group is conformed by a multi-stakeholder configuration of experts, academics, civil society, and so on, and obviously governments. Then, even before the Geneva agenda of the WSS processes in 2003, the UNESCO General Conference approved a recommendation on multilingualism in the cyberspace. And again, although it's an intergovernmental document, the monitoring we do every 4 years with member states, we do ask specific questions about the integration of the different stakeholders on that. And then to finalize with 4 other concrete things that express this importance of the multi-stakeholderism on that. When we did this process that many of you know, the guidelines for the governance of digital platforms was a massive multi-stakeholder endeavor. We received 10,000 comments, and one of the specific pillars of that document is also about multilingualism. Then we have a tool called the World Atlas of Languages, which we invite through an ad hoc committee the participation of the multi-stakeholder community. And finally, 2 quick things. We are the Secretariat of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, that Vats here is one of the key experts. And the configuration of that, the decade, is again a multi-stakeholder configuration with a strong participation of the indigenous communities, which is paramount for this. Currently, we are consulting, and please participate, a global roadmap on languages and technologies, which include this conversation, and I'm sure Vats will also speak a bit for that. And finally, before I guess Teresa will also mention that, we are very proud to partner with ICANN on the idea of universal acceptance. And for UNESCO, and I'm sure for ICANN, one of the central aspects of this partnership is also try to be as inclusive as possible in a multi-stakeholder way, inviting those different actors to engage with the idea of universal acceptance and therefore implement what we are looking for on that. So I'll stop here. As you saw, I could have chosen another example, but I think the example of multilingualism is super interesting to also measure this idea of multi-stakeholderism in the technical space of the internet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guillaume. Alors, on va voir pour les besoins de la diversité. Je vais parler aussi en français, alors. Et je suis super contente que Guillaume soit là pour parler de multilinguisme. Pourquoi? Parce que tout simplement, si on remonte jusqu'aux années 80, je pense que beaucoup d'entre vous ici se souviennent encore de ce que c'était que le rapport McBride de l'UNESCO, qui nous a amenés à parler des autoroutes de l'information à l'époque, et qui nous a donné d'ailleurs le sommet mondial pour la société de l'information. Pour la petite histoire, je pense que beaucoup de gens devraient peut-être faire le plongeon dans l'histoire pour savoir ce que c'est. So thank you very much. Teresa, you have the floor.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Guillermo. It's really a pleasure to be here. I was, first of all, thank you everybody for being here. I don't know how many were at music night last night. But 2 things. A, thanks for being here, having gone. It was, I think, quite eventful and very exciting. But I was also struck there how people who play different instruments and play and are very versed in singing come together and create something and create an evening. A bit of an analogy to that. digital cooperation, multilingualism, the languages bring people together. It allows each other to be heard, allows each other to engage and to cooperate, and to have that as part of a fundamental anchor in digital cooperation is essential if we want to have the internet really reach everybody and enable them that opportunity to communicate together. So it's an important part of the multi-stakeholder aspect. People come from different sectors, stakeholder groups, and speak different languages, and it's good to be heard and to hear what people are saying and to be able to engage with that. So as had been mentioned, we are very pleased. We have a longstanding partnership with UNESCO, an MOU with them also on some very specific project areas. And with that, the two organizations, while our mandates are quite different and our mission is quite different, share a common goal of including enhanced linguistic representation, including in the domain name system, to enable that full experience online as individuals in indigenous-speaking populations have offline. So that's quite important. This year, we started an additional partnership with UNESCO. That is on the Universal Acceptance Day, and this is an event that we have annually. And this year we had a good event with UNESCO as well. It's usually on or around the 28th of March, and we've just 2 days ago published the report of all the events that were held on 28th of March or around that date to demonstrate the approach, the results of all those events that were held globally. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at that recent report. As I'll talk about later in my other remarks, universal acceptance is the concept that all valid domain names and email addresses work in all internet-enabled applications, devices, and systems. Now, this might sound quite straightforward, but actually on a technical level, it is feasible to do. We just have to make sure that the applications and the platforms and all that can actually deliver on those results. UA Day is a chance for us to work together and to create awareness around the fact that it is possible to have to the left or the right of the dot or in your email address the ability to resolve that in legible, useful representation in different tools that we're using in this digital environment. So I'll touch on some of those later today, but in this session. But in the meantime, thank you very much, and we look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Teresa. And I know that one of the things that I have noticed, for example, lately is that in the African region, particularly, universal acceptance is really picking up. So yeah, being one of the places where we have the most languages, I think it is very important, and it's even more important when you have 60 to 80% of our populations, depending on the countries, that are still in rural areas and that do not speak the French and the English that we're speaking here. So great to see that happening. So we're going to now open the panel discussion. And the first question is, how does participation in technical internet governance contribute to more diverse and balanced stakeholder engagement in broader multi-stakeholder internet governance? And I'm going to give the floor to Vats first.
Thank you. Thank you for giving the floor. And a little bit expanding on my background, I come from Latvia's indigenous people Livonian community. And I have been working, let's say, 35 years hands on the ground, and through that I for past years I've been also part of International Decade of Indigenous Languages on a global task force of it, and currently co-chairing also ad hoc group on digital equalities and domains, and working hands on the ground. So one thing that I have learned throughout this time is that sometimes, unlike in real world, if you want to go one floor up, it's easier actually and faster than you go all the way to the roof and then come back down again. Let me give you an example from our own experience in Latvia. the Livonian language has indigenous status for 34 years already, so it seems like it should like locally be quite well developed. However, it's still a problem, for example, to use Livonian in state-run data systems, which basically leads to the fact that you cannot register NGO name or business name in Livonian language. And use it in official domains. So now, having for these past years this international dialogue and bringing that back home, this has kind of launched initiated quite big changes. So throughout a couple of past years that we have been working internationally. We see that domestically, so we now have our parliament, our state institutions look through all the technicalities and all the legislation that block using Livonian on official in official data systems. So this is like one example how you really through involving and participating in the kind of global issues actually change quite a lot domestically. And languages in generally, like good example for involving multi-stakeholderism. As Guillermo said previously, so UNESCO currently is developing global roadmap on multilingualism in digital era. And that is quite a task, reaching actual multilingualism, because getting all languages into digital domains, it's actually a complex task, because language is not just like a translation. Languages are everywhere in every aspect of our lives. So language lives in fridge, in a car. And so there is a need for very big stakeholder involvement, and very diverse, because it requires really the participation of all, of government, academia, developers, general public, and language community themselves. But what these documents like these and these initiatives, they help to build awareness and also a dialogue, bringing all the stakeholders to the table, and also helping to get the message out and explaining explanations out, like why this is necessary and how we can actually tackle this. So linguistic diversity is what is, for example, special if we start catering instead of 200 top languages. The technologies actually are working currently, so that we need to cater those other 7,000 or more languages. And what is special in those cases, because those cases are extremely diverse, or how GDPR and open science policies, for example, actually limit the use of the language on digital domains, or how to reach representation of languages not just in the internet, but on the cloud computing and cloud programs that are gaining more and more popularity. So and how to do it there. So and therefore also ensure this universal acceptance. So starting from the top is relevant, and especially it is one option how to get wide number of stakeholders involved, especially in the world that is extremely diverse, like linguistic world, for example.
Thank you very much, Vals. Absolutely. We need everybody, and we need the linguists. So, Beth, what do you have to say about how we come together to make this happen?
Every time. Thank you, Vals. False promise that he was the most awake, so he volunteered to go first, and I appreciate him. I'm a little bit less there. So I think the question is about how participation in the technical internet governance can contribute to balanced stakeholder engagement and broader governance. And certainly within the community of technical operators, you hear a lot about how the multi-stakeholder model is effective because it most closely mirrors the distributed technical nature of the internet infrastructure, and that makes it then the most effective way to ensure that stakeholders are represented and involved. However, if that participation doesn't also mirror the stakeholders that internet governance and policy impacts, then we aren't really using that model to its fullest extent, and really getting the most out of it that we can. So while I think there are a few layers to participation in technical governance that can really contribute to the success of the model and the success of representation. So as Waltz and Teresa noted, things like UA and diversity of language representation are vitally important. But also key to that is including a diversity of views and a diversity of skill sets. So for me, I focus on my participation in the technical community, not as an actual technical person. So that can mean a means to increase participation and lead to more comprehensive policies that are implementable if you not only have the diversity of languages and participation in that way, but if you have both technical and policy and legal, all of the universe of things that internet governance and the use of the internet can impact. In addition to that pure technical knowledge, I do believe that the diversity of views and skill sets is vital to making sure that as you engage in technical internet governance in that space, that you then have that it broadens the stakeholder engagement, but it also really leads to really rich, comprehensive policy. I used to work quite a lot with the U.S. government, and we would have technical folks come in, and they said, we want this result. And I said, well, this is going to do absolutely the opposite, because that's not how the internet works. And if you don't have people bridging that gap and doing that translation, because not everyone is good at everything, then you really end up with not a quality product. So I think the value of getting folks into participating in that technical layer is really having the translation there. So I think if we can focus, the foundation is the technology, and if intergovernments has that participation, be it region, background, business type, legal, policy, all those things, I think it really does just result in a more comprehensive quality product that kind of stands the test of time.
Thank you very much, Beth. And I definitely identify with the translation part. My first job in life was as an interpreter translator. So sitting in between two people who are saying, things to each other and making sure that I don't say it the wrong way at the risk of provoking world war was one of my jobs. So I definitely, understand that. Amrita?
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
So I'll, to answer this question, I will start with a few examples. And just to give you a background, I work for CCUI, which is not what was mentioned there. We work on tech policy. And my involvement in ICANN per se is to represent the end user communities, especially from developing countries, and I come from Asia Pacific, India. So if we are talking about participation, and I'm talking about even non-technical people participating in the technical internet governance, I'll cite a few examples. All the panelists had been speaking about multilingualism, universal acceptance as to how the domain names have to be compatible to regional languages. Now, how does it translate down when you go down to the grassroots? So there have been some initiatives where volunteers have not only been building capacity of the technical community, as in the language communities, as well as technologists who actually make products or services within in various regions everywhere, Africa, Asia, etc., on why is the need of, what is the importance of universal acceptance? Why is it needed? Similarly, if you want the companies to listen to you, you have to skill people. So there were volunteers who went, worked with the technical community to develop programs which could be undertaken in technical engineering colleges, etc., so that the skills can be built up. And the younger generation of engineers can actually, imbibe those things. When they go back to the jobs, they are, at least to a certain extent, equipped or aware that these are certain things you have to take care of. So that's how, and they can come back with feedback. There is a feedback loop, and tell, the technical community that, look, this is working, this is not working. So it develops an ecosystem, and it cannot be just, you say this is good, it has to percolate, but there has to be a system, and that's where the different stakeholders come in. Similarly, the other thing is, the domain name abuse is something which is being spoken about in various ways. Now, it has various dimensions. There are certain things which the technical community can look after. There are certain dimensions which is content related, and there are some dimensions which is very social, or which is, in normal day-to-day interpersonal. How do you break the silos or the problem and try to address it at different levels? So, at ICANN, there is the SAC has been trying to come up with certain, working on how to address the domain name issue thing. At large, we are trying to simplify it, or, for example, develop a module. And it's a small module which we are developing on phishing, which we want our community members to again educate their end user communities as to what they need to really take care of, how they need to, the awareness part of it, so that you can at least to certain extent reduce the harms. You can't completely remove them, but at least at certain levels. Similarly, the domain name security, which is important. The technical communities impart that training to the ISPs or the telcos, whoever do it, because that's important. So if you look at it, it's not a very simple thing that, for example, ICANN or the community in ICANN is designing something, but you also need the acceptance from the community that this is working or this is not working. And for this, this kind of engagement is important. And the other thing which is important for developing countries is it builds skills for young people who are looking for jobs. There are new avenues which comes out for them, which we miss at times. And there are various, for example, working on internationalized domain names. There may be a lot of other avenues of work coming up rather than the cliched work, because jobs are scarce today. AI is taking away jobs. So those are certain things I think we need to take care of. And I hope I've been able to answer with these examples something of why this is important.
Thank you very much, Amrita. And I'm absolutely in agreement with you. Excuse me. One of the things that we don't realize, I think, in general, is that, so you spoke about telcos and ISPs, for example. Even inside the technical community, there's a lot more people that we need to co-opt that are not like the regulars of the internet per se world. So, and those are part of the stakeholders that we absolutely need to co-opt in this work. So thanks for that. We are going to now continue with the second question, and how can digital cooperation be leveraged to build awareness and the capacity for underrepresented groups to engage in technical internet governance? Beth, may I start with you? Thank you.
I'm happy to. So I think that there's maybe two prongs to this. One is the existing folks that are already participating in these models, in these groups, to be much more intentional about coordination between the groups. The IGF is a non-decisional space. It's discussion. You can have big thoughts and big ideas, and you can really run with it, and have the conversations and do a lot of learning, ask really hard questions, in a kind of a safe space, because you're not necessarily coming out you don't have to agree at the end. It's what it's for. And I think it's a huge value. But then, you go to a space like ICANN, and it's, you're making a policy. It's a decisional space. But we often miss the leap from things that have been really matured and thought about really well by folks here in an IGF type space with a really diversity of views. How do we intentionally push those things into other spaces when they're ready? And when it's appropriate to that other space's scope. And I'm just using ICANN because that's an easy one. We all know that one. We also know IGF because we're here. And then I think the other item for that is, for underrepresented groups, is utilizing capacity building and some of the programs that exist to bring in not only youth participants, which I think is Really, really important. And I don't think we have any young ones in the room. Sorry. You're all very youthful. I'm very sorry. Ajit raises his hand. You're aged out. So I think that we have some of the youth participants have been wildly impressed. They make such great contributions. There's a lot of programs like that across the communities and groups that we work in. So if we leverage those well, if we really dedicate our time to making that value as opposed to a box check, I think that could be very helpful. And then there's other things, especially I live in a little bit of an ICANN space, ICANN land. Fellowships for when you're not a youth, but you're trying to expand your views. There's a fellowship program, there's newcomer programs, there's all of these things that they exist, but can we do a better job of really making them robust and bringing, again, the diversity of views, but then also really then reminding ourselves that it's not just about the participation, it's about of humans, but also taking those ideas and making sure that we're cooperating and moving those into the right space.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Viv. Guilherme, may I ask you to also give insights into this question?
Sure. Sorry. I think that we need to acknowledge how important it is the inclusion of underrepresented groups in the conversation. But we also need to acknowledge that we are far from guaranteeing it. Because it's difficult, because it costs money, because we are not fully prepared to do it. But we are having, for example, discussions about multilingualism and the inclusion of indigenous languages with a very minor participation of indigenous communities, unfortunately. I'm very glad that VATS is here, but should be many more. And we need to, the first step for solving a problem is acknowledging we have a problem and not put it under the carpet. So the entire technical community, internet community needs to start recognizing that the idea of multistakeholderism also implies diversity within each stakeholder group. So when we look to civil society, it can't be the usual suspects of the digital rights communities, nothing against them, always present and always at the table. We need to find ways to get the others that are not always around these tables. And again, I'm saying it's easy to say, it's not necessarily easy to do. Before, and I finish with that, before joining UNESCO, I worked with children's rights. And with UNICEF and Save the Children and so on, we were always trying to see the best way of including children in the conversation. And it's super necessary, but it's not an easy thing because you need other methodologies, you need other ways of, and I finish with that. We just did in February a language conference in UNESCO and technology, and we tried to actually bring indigenous communities. Even our procurement systems are not adapted for that. Because you need to have a bank account to pay the per diem. And the indigenous groups will say, no, we don't have that bank account in that particular indigenous community. So if we are going to be serious about that, we need to take these very high-level titles and go into the specifics of how to actually guarantee this participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is really, truly resonating just because I come from a place, yesterday we were talking about several things, like how to make, artificial intelligence and the work that is being done globally around that more diverse and representative of underrepresented communities. And I come from a region that is very young. So to be able to have very young people into this conversation is definitely a challenge, though they have to be there. It's their present and their future. Teresa, you want to say something about... Sure. Thank you.
I think in particular, the youth or the next generation is absolutely critical to have involved because they come from an era and an opportunity where it wasn't about the dial-up and hoping to connect, but rather it's the assumption that the app is going to work, but it actually takes something to make that work. And we had the opportunity recently in Bahrain, actually, to do a hackathon with university students around designing a website that could take internationalized domain names and universal acceptance. And we had 60 students, and they were allowed to use artificial intelligence in order to help solve the problem. But they had to create a website that could respond to questions that were posed, and it could respond to questions in English or Arabic. And it had to be able to process certain information in relation to that website. So that sounds like a very simple task in principle. You design a website, right? But there's actually quite a bit of work that goes around it. But it was amazing to watch these students. For 2 days, they were dedicated and spent time trying to solve this, and they were incredibly creative and ingenious in all of their attempts. But it's a really good example of bridging this cooperation into some very practical tools. And these students are the future engineers in other companies, so they come in with awareness, to your point, solving the problems. So just an example of how we can bridge in the next generation around that. But more specifically, if I have just a few seconds, in relation to other opportunities moving forward, from our perspective, there's also further awareness and capacity and opportunities for ensuring underrepresented communities, indigenous languages, communities that may not be online necessarily at this point in time. And that also relates to the opportunity to have your presence online in what we refer to as the next round top-level domain program. That is the choice to have what one wants to the right or the left of the dot, depending upon if one is looking for something in Arabic script or in other scripts or in Roman character sets. So with that, internationalized domain names will clearly provide an opportunity for further opportunities for different language groups and for that bridging of digital cooperation from the technical side, but also then into the policy side and potentially even political opportunities for regions and communities to be represented fully in the way that they are and that they want to do. The opportunities there are multifold. So there's also the opportunity for community-based top-level domains, and that is quite common. We have seen that in the context of different communities coming together, and we hope to see that opportunity really for communities that currently may want to have also their digital presence online. We've seen it in the context in the past also with regards to cities or communities, .Amsterdam or .Wien or others, who have their presence. So it's not always about the revenue or the business model, but it's oftentimes about having one's digital presence online and bridging that cooperation from the technical into the community and into schools and education and healthcare and all of those. A part of our program also provides applicant support for communities that qualify. I'll do a shout out to my colleague Christy over here. If you have any questions, she can provide you with anything that you may want to know. And that is very much open to nonprofits, indigenous groups, small businesses, and NGOs that might not have the resources to participate fully in the application process, but we want to make sure that there's opportunities afforded there. So these are some examples of very practical things that we're undertaking right now to bridge the digital cooperation into other areas, but create awareness for anybody who wishes to be participating in any of those endeavors. And that program will start early next year in April. So thanks.
Wonderful. We'll look forward to it. Vals, you want to add anything around how to bring underrepresented communities here?
A little bit, because I have a couple of points, but they are somehow in concordance with what already sounded. Again, so many of my examples, good or bad, come from my own experience. We had an expedition which went out to one area, and there are our colleagues going to different institutions asking the same question. So, do you have any Livonian heritage here? And all these institutions answered no, no, no. And then a week later, what happened? So local newspaper found out, and they went through the same places, asking the same question, basically. And in that 1 week, all these institutions started to say, well, yes, we have plenty of it. And it took a week to see for situation completely changed. This is something similar with this kind of a digital cooperation we have at International Decade of Indigenous Languages. There is a survey that went out in March, a survey of indigenous languages. So the primary task was to collect data so that we could make informed decisions and we could better understand the actual position of the indigenous languages. And there is a big part on digital domains and digital issues, including what kind of technologies you have, so what kind of technical issues you have, or how do you see them. And on one hand, this is data collection, but on the other hand, it is actually an opportunity for communities to look in a mirror and maybe for first time to consider, well, there are those things out there. Should we have it? Can we build it? And this is something that initiates process. So it's kind of the first way how to leverage is being or making underrepresented groups noticed, and kind of giving them idea that we can do something, or there is there is something that we could be involved, and this kind of launches the process. So the next level of leveraging is actually the consolidation and accumulation of knowledge, and one thing that we need, and especially now talking about multilingualism, we need designated networking platforms to connect the dots, like repositories or forums like this. So this is also something that is planned in the roadmap, but more a focused way, because if we think about underrepresented groups, those subjects, so these are not kind of a mainstream subjects. These are not mainstream groups. This is not mainstream knowledge. And but at the same time, we are kind of entering a new era in technology-wise. So the era of tailored solutions. So we need those kind of a niche platforms where we can talk cross-sectorally and with multi-stakeholders, where we can talk, where we can learn, and where we can actually innovate. And bring new solutions. And in this sense, I think that multilingualism is kind of our testing ground. So on the road towards the customization, because if we can do it, then we can do everything. If we can't, then it's actually the question what good are we with all that we know? Because at the end of the day, and this is my personal opinion, that this technology is moving and in the direction where it should be capable to serve each individual. So getting voices heard and getting those platforms, how now those are not mainstream but also underrepresented different groups are being heard and being learned from is actually crucial.
Thank you very much, Vels. Amrita, you as a MAG member and as someone who has participated in national, IGFs, regional IGFs, I want you to maybe bring out to the community here some of the ways that this digital cooperation actually works also on a regional and kind of local level, so all of this can maybe tie together, localize.
Right, thank you. And I will mix a few things and speak now. And I'll take an APAC example because that's where I belong from. So if you look at it, there are fellowships which, for example, ICANN gives Next Gen, which is very young fellows. Internet Society has certain fellowships. When we have the national regional IGFs, like the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, we have fellowship. Now we have a lot of diverse people coming in from different countries who were as in we try to get people from places, but it's not possible to get everyone. For example, someone from Mongolia, whom we got in, or Bhutan, which are pretty unrepresented at this point of time. Now, the challenge is once you bring them, how do you retain them? So what we've been trying to do at the Asia Pacific Regional at-large organization and at APR-IGF is create WhatsApp groups and have them there, because you have to interact with young people in the way they want, not the way we want it. And we found it very effective. They chat there, they work there. Now in AP-RALO, what we do is we have small subcommittees formed on many things. Like we have the continuous improvement process, which is happening. We have a subcommittee, which are young people. We have someone who's mentoring them. They make, and they work. They feel empowered. If their names are there at the end, they feel empowered. We have the newsletter where we have people working together to form something. So if you get them into the system, empower them, keep on giving them information, this is the opportunity, this is what you can do, they also can think. So many of them come from diverse backgrounds. After that, after you give them the first step, if they want to explore something else, they can. Like if they're interested in the technical part of it, they can go there. If they're interested more in rights perspective, they can go. You should not limit them. That has been our learning. And we also encourage them to take it back to their communities, discuss, so that they can get more people. It's not perfect, but those are the steps which have worked. Similarly, if you can encourage them, for example, there are many people, young people, who have been funded by the MAG, or they're coming from a particular region, and they're pretty shy, and there are many newcomers in IGF. Trying to get them together, speaking to them, getting them introduced to people, or even taking a picture with them, helps them, empowering them, so that they're motivated, because you have to keep their motivation on. They have jobs to think of, they have their careers, but you have to excite them to be there in the space, because it's not always exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amrita. I actually use one word, which is hand-holding. You know, it's really accompanying people into seeing and believing in how is it that they can interact with other people, because they feel empowered, as you said. They have the arguments. They actually know how to talk. Beth was earlier talking about how do we get technical people to talk to regular people, like policymakers, so they understand, why some GDPR, decisions may break the machine or not. So, yeah, those are really some of the issues that we're facing. And it's all about making sure that we communicate in the right way. Let's make sure that nothing is being lost in translation. So thank you all. And I think we're now going to open the floor for audience participation. If you have questions out there, or maybe online. Christy? No? Okay. All right. Yeah, you have mics on both sides. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dominique Azal-Mathieu. I work for WCC, the World Wide Web Consortium. As you may know, we have a program, the Internationalization Program, which is about making web pages work across as many languages and cultures as possible, very similar to the ICANN program for domain names. And one of the structural issues we have in that program is getting enough contact and input from the right expert across so many languages that exist out there. And we already have some networks there, but I wonder if there is something that, whether it's the regional IGF, whether it's UNESCO, whether it's some academia networks that could help in providing a source of constant expertise in this field, because we have the basic knowledge about what is needed, but until you get to the right expert that has the deep knowledge about how the language needs to work for locutors to really make use of the web to its full potential, we can't really do the full amount of work we want to. So I'm curious if the panelists have any suggestions about how we can structure better this source of expertise.
Well, you're at the right door because I'm pretty sure Guilherme knows how to respond to this because UNESCO is one of the places where we have a collective of linguists that can help. Guilherme?
Thank you. Very interesting question. Two quick things. One, please do, everyone here, include you, do look into this roadmap on languages and technology that is currently open for consultations and make your contributions to that document, because what you said could be, if it's not yet there, I read, but I can't remember, this kind of cooperation, it's important to make sure that it's there. But on your concrete question, two quick things. You can come to speak with me and Vats at the end of the session. But organizations like the World Wide Consortium, and we spoke yesterday with ICANN similarly, you can't write to us at the Secretariat of the Decade of Indigenous Languages and make this offer, saying we are ready to cooperate with these experts for improving that, and then we can connect you with these huge communities that are under the umbrella of the decade. And similarly, in the World Atlas of Languages, we can connect you with the national focal points that are from 130 plus countries. Of course, we do this in an anonymous way. We send to them your offer. It's for them to decide if they want to contribute or not. But please feel free to contact me and we can advance on that. Thank you.
Wonderful. And before I give you the floor, but Teresa, I wanted to add a little something.
Yeah, and Edmund may touch on this as well. Likewise, happy to exchange contact information to complement also what UNESCO is doing in relation to some of the very specific technical areas. We also have the what's referred to as the LGR, the Label Generation Rule Set. They're working with very specific communities on the areas around the domain name system and the rules for that. So that might complement access to yet another group that could be of help, or at least know where to go. So happy to exchange information on that.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Edmund?
Yeah, Edmund Chung here from .Asia. Actually, I came up to respond to the question very similar to what Teresa said, but just, I guess, adding a little bit of context around it. What is called the label generation rules thing is actually looking at all the languages and scripts around the world and defining policies for defining names that can or should be used on the domain name system, and therefore ICANN and the community actually spent over the last decade, more than 10 years, developing all the policies for the different languages to deal with abuse issues and so on. That group has basically gone through all the scripts and languages that are live, I guess, in terms of actively being used. So you can look at what is called it's called the Generation Panel, and that doesn't mean anything, but they are local communities, local experts of linguists, and they include linguists as well as technologists and engineers to look at what the policies need to be. So that group might be, actually it's readily available on the ICANN website. You can check it out, and that should give you a good sense of all the people around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edmund. Christy, do we have any questions online? Okay, all right. Beth wanted to chime in?
Just a question that I think maybe we didn't answer your question. I think LGRs are great, and that's important for the technical aspect, but I think maybe you were asking more about actual translation and content. And I hate to run right by it, and I don't necessarily have an answer, but I think that's something that we have certainly run into at PIR at .org. We have several IDNs, and we've engaged globally on different languages, and it is incredibly difficult to translate appropriately, as Michelle well knows. So I think that just making sure that we're answering your question. You could tell me I'm very wrong. But maybe that's something we can just take away and try and brainstorm a little, because I think it's a very universal issue.
Thank you very much, Beth. You're absolutely right on that point. And you wanted to add a little something?
So just to clarify, my
Okay.
question was actually answered, but the point on translation is also one.
Okay,
of the
okay,
issues.
okay.
So, we're also very happy to hear any ideas that may be in strengthening translation support for the technical community, because again, another way we can better involve as many communities as possible is by making our specifications available in the many languages of the world. So we have a program for that, but again, it's a voluntary bottom-up, and the more people we have that can contribute to that program would also be super helpful. So maybe there is something indeed that we could work as a group on together.
Wonderful. Communication. Valts, you wanted to add something to this one too?
Just to add a little bit about contacting, because I do really understand the problem of getting the right person, especially when it comes to languages and that diverse landscape of language situations. That I was previously mentioning this survey of indigenous languages. So one part of the survey, one function of the survey is that we also ask for those people who are responding for the future involvement. And we are doing through this survey, we are looking precisely to that, to finding right persons who are proficient answering questions about this language and who can be a contact point directly for that particular language community. So I would definitely encourage to follow up all the developments regarding International Decade of Indigenous Languages and the roadmap, and we'll just contact later.
Thank you very much, Val. So we have less than 2 minutes left, and I know they're going to stop the mics very soon. So whoever wants to jump in to talk about the one action maybe that we can take in the next 6 to 12 months, having talked about the decade of indigenous languages and really real participation, meaningful participation in technical discussions coming from everywhere. We can't leave anybody behind in all this. So who wants to add that one little bit that we need to do to make sure that we have a real participation and multi-stakeholder participation?
So maybe I will jump on. So it's kind of in like next 6 to 12 months. I think that I know that I was talking maybe a lot about multilingualism, but there's one thing that is very much defining our future, and the thing that will happen somewhere in this period is the finalization of that roadmap of the multilingualism digital area. But following that, there will also be development of the action plan about concrete actions and practicalities on how to bring it to life. So I would call everyone to participate in that as well together with us.
Thank you very much. So 8 seconds. So I guess I'm just going to say thank you very much for coming here this morning. Thank you for braving the morning and being here with us. And thanks to all my panelists. And have a great day.